Why do you think that exit strategy and planning doesn't rank high on the list of priorities for entrepreneurs then?
Yes, another great question. And the problem here is what I would call an exit taboo. There aren't that many taboo topics in Silicon Valley today, but exit planning and talking about exit has that taboo flavor. And I would say this also is born out of a lot of misunderstandings and myths that surrounds the whole exit process. I would break it down into five components that give rise to this taboo. First and foremost, there's a signaling problem. Entrepreneurs are mission driven, right? And they don't want to signal to investors that, hey, look, I'm here to make a quick buck and build to flip, right? This is not like house flipping. This is something that you're pouring your passion, all your creative energies into. And vice versa, investors want to make sure that you are there and you can ride the storms, because every startup has a lot of ups and downs. So both sides are looking for commitment, and therefore a lot of folks worry that bringing up this exit conversation just leaves a wrong impression, especially in the initial courtship phases with investors. I don't recommend people even put that in their slide deck about the exit strategy, because you do need to establish some ground rules and basics and get to know the other side. So that's one reason I would say this conversation doesn't happen. The problem is that exit planning and execution, eventually, and implementation of your exit plan can't happen just with the founder themselves. They do need to have all the stakeholders pulling in the right direction. Their leadership team, their key investors, their board, they need to be all aligned. So that's one problem. The other one is that there's this optimism bias or blind spot where we don't think the statistics necessarily apply to us. I actually surveyed a number of entrepreneurs last year that I knew, and I asked them, hey, what do you think are the chances of success for any one startup? And they all put it in the 0 to 20% range, which is pretty accurate, in line with statistics. After a few questions and distracting them a little bit, I asked them, well, what do you think are the chances of success for your startup? And pretty much everyone thought it's pretty certain that they would succeed, right? So no one believes that these statistics apply to them. And therefore, they don't take this necessary to mitigate against risk that they don't think that exists, right? So there's this optimism blind spot, I call it. And I go into details, a lot more details about each of these in the book itself, of course. There is this present bias. So this is number 3 on my list. Present bias basically means that we tend to value short-term outcomes a lot more than long-term, and risk also. We perceive short-term risk a lot more than long-term risks. And what happens then because of this is that we tend to then prioritize what's urgent over what's important. So it keeps getting pushed out until it's too late. And then there's perception also among some entrepreneurs that most acquisitions fail. Not true, but the failure stories tend to get a lot of the media attention and tend to be also more memorable, like the AOL Time Warner or many other acquisitions that Yahoo did, for instance. Again, when you look at the stats, when you look at the numbers, the fact that there are 45,000 acquisitions or more per year, you kind of realize that, no, that's not the case. In fact, when they survey the practitioners, people who do deals, and ask them, hey, did this deal, on average, have your deals met your expectations? The answer is yes. So most acquisitions do actually produce the intended results. Ultimately, there is also this perceived lack of agency by some entrepreneurs. They feel that there isn't much they can do about an eventual exit, and that, a big company like Google or Apple or Microsoft, what leverage could they possibly have? So they should just go heads down, execute, and if those guys ever want to acquire them, they'll come to them and they'll deal with it when the time comes. Of course, that's the wrong actually perception. We don't improve what we don't work on, and basically delaying your exit planning just basically means you will have a much less ideal outcome when the time comes. Even if you're lucky enough to be pursued by other acquirers, you're just not prepared to execute on that properly.
Yeah.
So for all these reasons, I would say entrepreneurs need to focus on exit planning, no matter what their stage of their startup, even if you have just started your company. That should be something in the back of your mind that you give it attention, you cultivate and you grow into it over time. Not drop everything and focus on your exit, but allocate some amount of time towards that. Of course, the closer you are to an eventual exit scenario, you have to allocate more time. But it should never be that you don't allocate any time. Sadly, 4 out of 5 entrepreneurs have spent less than a day thinking or seriously doing anything about their exits. So that needs to change.